ADR. Promoting dialogue.
Good evening and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on wadr.org. Welcome to Newslink. First, our top stories. Open Society Foundations criticizes African government's failures to deliver on democratic promises.
You could not be a member of parliament, or if you don't have, wealthy sponsors, you could not compete and expect, to represent the people. So that means that elections have become a business, and this hinders, political participation.
ECOWAS Chair President Julius Maada arrives Burkina Faso in push for regional reconciliation. Chad's parliament approves extension of presidential term from 5 to 7 years. In Dakar, African Union partners, CSOs gathered to mark 25 years of women, peace and security agenda.
And so being part of this regional consultation, it definitely helps for us to contribute in terms of showing how the Gambia has progressed with the WPS agenda.
Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
Here is Imo Edit with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining our broadcasts. We'll begin with the visit of ECOWAS Chair and Sierra Leonean President Julius Maada, who arrived this afternoon in the Burkinabe capital Ouagadougou as part of his regional reconciliation diplomacy. The two-day visit marks a new step in his effort to restore dialogue between ECOWAS and the Confederation of Sahel States. Christopher Tijo has more details in this report.
The visit aligns with the call for dialogue he launched last August, underscoring his determination to bridge the fractures that have shaken West Africa's regional architecture and against the backdrop of a shifting regional order. President Bio said on social media upon his arrival in Ouagadougou that regional bloc has always championed peace, unity and shared prosperity for all citizens. Talks will focus on two key areas: strengthening bilateral cooperation between Sierra Leone and Burkina Faso and holding strategic consultations on regional and international issues. The program includes both an expanded working session between the delegations and a private meeting between the two leaders. This is President Bio's second visit to Ouagadougou in just over a year, reflecting the strategic importance ECOWAS attaches to maintaining dialogue with Sahelian countries despite their official withdrawal from the organization. Recall on August 5, Bio reaffirmed his belief that it is imperative to build a stronger relationship between ECOWAS and the Sahelian nations, calling for a closer and stronger partnership. After announcing their withdrawal from ECOWAS in January 2024, Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger formally transformed their alliance of Sahel states into a confederation in July 2024. Their final departure from ECOWAS took effect in January 2025.
Christopher Ticho filed that report. Elsewhere, the Open Society Foundation's OSF is raising an alarm over widening gaps between democratic governance and the daily realities of citizens in Africa. This was highlighted in OSF's latest report titled The Nexus Between Democratic Governance and Economic Justice, launched in Accra on Monday. The report reveals that most governments on the continent are failing to translate democratic promises into tangible development, urging leaders to chart a new path that links democracy to real progress in people's lives. Nadi Tete reports.
The Open Society Foundations has called for urgent reforms to ensure Africa's democracies deliver real progress for citizens. Launching its latest research, The Nexus Between Democratic Governance and Economic Justice, the foundation reveals that, despite holding regular elections, many African states remain trapped in what experts call choiceless democracies. Author of the report, economist Dr. Indongo Sambasila, explained that the high cost of politics is locking ordinary citizens out of leadership.
If you are not wealthy, you could not be a member of parliament, or if you don't have, wealthy sponsors, you could not compete and expect, to represent the people. So that means that elections have become a business, and this hinders, political participation.
Does it equally encourage corruption?
Yes.
The report also highlights the impact of decades of neoliberal economic policies often imposed by international lenders, which Dr. Sila says has stifled true transformation.
The policies, heavy taxation, population, just doing economic policy just to repay the foreign debt, etc.
Dr. Sila is urging African leaders to chart a new path that links democracy to development, ensuring policies directly improve lives.
We need to have a conversation on democracy and development. We say that these are not two antithetical concepts. Democracy has to go hand in hand in development, and vice versa. So we have to study the material conditions needed to have democracy that brings development, and development that is not authoritarian.
He concluded that democracy and development should not be treated as separate goals, but as inseparable pillars of Africa's culture. The report is expected to spark broader conversations on how to rebuild trust in Africa's democratic systems. For WDR, Nadidi Tete, Accra.
We turn to the Gambia, where civil society group Gambians Against Looted Assets, GALA, has issued a strong statement following the arrest of its members and the controversial removal of Auditor General Modu Cisse. Describing the dismissal as a severe attack on institutional integrity, GALA says only sustained collective action will compel the state to reverse what it calls a violation of the rule of law. The group has now applied for a permit to stage a peaceful 3-day nationwide protest. Among their key demands, the immediate reinstatement of the Auditor General and the unconditional release of the arrested members. Key among those arrested included OSIWA Kamara, the spokesperson of the group, who was arrested while granting an interview to a local media. Meanwhile, prominent human rights activist Mari Jabati has condemned the arrest of youth activists detained on Monday while planning a press conference to protest the police-led removal of Auditor General Modu Cisse. Speaking out after the incident, Jabati accused the government of showing blatant disregard for the rule of law, a concern he says reflects a broader erosion of democratic principles in the country.
5 people were arrested, 5 young men, and they are taken at the Koto police station. That's why I understand they are detained. At the police, their statements were taken and charged for nuisance and unlawful assembly. Apparently, the government doesn't want to abide by the rule of law, and it is very obvious that the action, by the president to remove the Auditor General is completely unconstitutional and illegal, and so the prevalence of corruption, inefficiency, and so on in the public sector is such that citizens, particularly young people, have taken up their constitutional right to protest these illegalities and constitutional actions and misconduct.
We do have more of that conversation with Mari Jabate in the other half of the news.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
The parliament in Chad has voted for an extension of the presidential term from 5 to 7 years, renewable, a move supporters say will promote stability but which critics argue could entrench power. The vote marks a significant institutional turning point for the Central African nation, reshaping the balance of power and redefining the country's political architecture. Augustin Kohli completes the story.
The most notable reforms extends the presidential term from 5 to 7 years, which is renewable. Deputies' mandates were also increased to 6 years, aligning legislative and presidential calendars to avoid overlapping electoral cycles. The reform introduces the position of Deputy Prime Minister, tasked with strengthening coordination of government action. Analysts say this could ease the heavy workload concentrated in the presidency while giving greater visibility to executive teamwork. To address long-standing concerns about transparency, the amendment includes public financing of election campaigns aimed at ensuring fairness and reducing the dominance of wealthy or well-connected candidates. Significantly, the reform also makes members of the government liable before ordinary courts for economic and financial crimes committed while in office, a measure that could bolster the fight against corruption in Chad, a country where governance has long been challenged by allegations of mismanagement. Nilom Mbakoto, chair of the special commission that spearheaded the review, said the parliamentary initiative was designed to increase administrative efficiency and ensure institutional flexibility that will benefit the country's future. Why the near-unanimous vote underscores the broad support of the ruling majority, critics outside parliament warn that the extension of presidential terms risks weakening democratic accountability.
August and Cully filed that report. In Guinea, the opposition party Union of Democratic Forces of Guinea, UFDG, is urging its supporters to boycott the upcoming referendum scheduled for September 21, 2025. The UFDG president, Selu Jalon stated that the draft of the new constitution does not reflect the will of the Guinean people. The former prime minister argues that the proposed constitution is designed to preserve the military's hold on power. Abdullah Hassan completes the story.
In one of his rare address to his supporters from exile, opposition leader Selu Jalon calls on his supporters to boycott the September 21 referendum. According to the former prime minister, participating in the vote will be validating a draft new constitution that threatens democracy in Guinea and distracts the country from the deep aspirations of its citizens.
The UFDG will not participate in this referendum masquerade intended to facilitate the commission of perjury and to legitimize a coup d'etat. We invite all Guineans to stay home on September 21 and to abstain from voting, because even if you vote no, your vote will be counted as yes. Therefore, do not associate yourselves with this theft of the votes of Guineans.
The president of the UFDG party also calls on Guineans to oppose by all peaceful means what he considers to be a siege of power by the ruling military.
We have always extended our hand to dialogue to give all the chances to peace, but our patience has been taken for weakness. Now there is no more room for hesitation. We must defend our rights and regain our freedoms. The time has come. Guinea is our common home, our common good.
Selu Jalon's statement comes as his party experiences an internal rift. Several former officials of the main opposition political party have joined the ruling military government. They are campaigning for a yes vote in the referendum set to take place on September 21, 2025.
Abdullah Hassan filed that report. You're listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Here is a reminder of our top stories. Open Society Foundations criticizes African government's failures to deliver on democratic promises. ECOWAS Chair President Bio arrives Burkina Faso in push for regional reconciliation. Chad's parliament approves extension of presidential term from 5 to 7 years. And still ahead of the news, in Dakar, African Union partners CSO gather to mark 25 years of Women, Peace and Security Agenda. We do have a guest interview and sports update. Please stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
We're streaming live on WADR.org, YouTube and Facebook. You can also listen to us on Utelsat 16A on the frequency 12687 megahertz. Now, back here in Senegal, several key stakeholders, including civil society representatives, women groups, and traditional leaders from across the African Union's 5 regions have converged on Dakar to discuss the Women, Peace and Security Agenda. The year 2025 marks the 25th anniversary of the UN Security Council Resolution 1325, a landmark framework for the Women, Peace and Security Agenda, which was adopted in 2000. This agenda aims to increase the meaningful participation of women in peace and security processes, prevent violence against women, protect women in conflict, and promote gender mainstreaming in relief and recovery efforts. Over the next 2 days, delegates will assess past achievements and plan for the future of women's participation in peace building, including ongoing challenges, while strategizing on revitalizing the WPS agenda going forward. This event is organized by the African Union with support from the German organization JISE and UN Women. Priscilla Yago Cisse is the participant and co-founder of the Women Organization for Women and Victims Empowerment in the Gambia.
It's really critical at this point in time. You may be aware that the Gambia is going through a transitional justice process following over 20 years of authoritarian rule in the Gambia. And so being part of this regional consultation, it definitely helps for us to contribute in terms of showing how the Gambia has progressed with the WPS agenda, looking at the 4 pillars, including protection, promotion, prevention, and of course relief and recovery, and how those are translating in the Gambia's context.
With regards to this particular component of the WPS that speaks towards relief and recovery for especially female victims, to what extent you have helped female victims of these discovery?
Thanks, that's a valid question. And so, yes, our focus and niche is all those victims of human rights violations in the Gambia. However, those violations stem and go across the board. We have individuals and women who find themselves displaced and living as refugees and who are stateless because of the atrocities and because of the violations that they were subjected to. Furthermore, we're also working on implementing the different laws and policies and reforms agenda that is in place, which contributes to promotion and protection as well, and to prevent future human rights violations from occurring.
Priscilla Yagusese is the co-founder of the Women's Organization for Women and Victims Empowerment in the Gambia. President John Dramani Mahama has assured Ghanaians that his government's flagship Big Push infrastructure program will deliver nationwide development, with all 16 regions set to benefit from an equitable share of road projects. Launching the initiative on Tuesday at Afenya in the Greater Accra region, President Mahama said the Big Push was designed to modernize Ghana's road network, enhance inter-regional connectivity, and open new economic opportunities across the country. President Mahama outlined the priorities of the Big Push program, beginning with the construction of roads that connect regional capitals to facilitate trade and strengthen national unity.
Ghana suffers a deficit of $1.5 billion every year in infrastructure investment, especially in the road sector. And so the idea of the Big Push was to set aside and prioritize investment into the infrastructure sector, especially in roads. And so in 2020, in our manifesto, you would have seen the Big Push, and we said that we're going to invest $2 billion every year in infrastructure, especially in roads. Unfortunately, we did not win that election. By the grace of God, in 2024, the people of Ghana gave NDC the mandate, and that gave rebirth to the Big Push program. And so it is a manifesto promise upon which the people of Ghana voted for us in 2024. And so from January 7th, we've been packaging, designing road projects across the length and breadth of the country. The Big Push touches all the 16 regions in this country. Every region is going to benefit from its share of the Big Push programs.
Ghana's President John Mahama speaking there. In Togo, the budgetary decision makers of the ECOWAS have been meeting since Monday in Lomé to further the fight against money laundering and the financing of terrorism. Organized by the Intergovernmental Group on Action Against Money Laundering in West Africa, Djaba, this two-day meeting aims to reflect on the financial mechanisms that can support the organization's actions in a sustainable manner. Francis Boniface has the details in this report.
The aim is for the participants to reflect and discuss the various mechanisms to be used to combat the scourges that are festering the economies of the countries of the sub-region. Chabinyonsi Akiteme is the president of the National Financial Information Processing Unit of Togo, CENTIF.
L'Afrique de l'Ouest est aussi confrontée.
West Africa is also facing persistent and multifaceted threats. The infiltration of formal and informal economies by products of transnational criminality, the use of financial and commercial circuits to finance terrorism, and more recently, the sophistication of planting techniques via virtual assets and new financial services. In the face of these challenges, compliance with international norms, including those of Gafi, is no longer an option but an essential requirement.
According to Chabinyonsi, in the fight against money laundering, the financing of terrorism, and the financing of proliferation, Togo is making efforts with concrete actions to overcome these scourges.
L'adoption de nouvelles lois conformes aux standards.
The adoption of new laws in accordance with international standards and the norms of Gavi, the conduct of its national risk analysis, is a strategic mapping of the threats and vulnerabilities of LVCFT, whose conclusions guide national policies and allow targeting of high-risk sectors such as the real estate sector, the banking sector, and manual trade in order to assess the effectiveness of this approach.
Aware that financial crime transcends national borders, the organization calls for synergy of regional action to contain a phenomenon that threatens the economic stability of the continent.
That was a report by our Lome correspondent Silvio Drago and presented by Francis Boniface.
Politics, analyses on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
And our guest interview this evening returned to the Gambia, where at least 5 people were arrested on Monday outside the National Audit Office during a planned press conference by the youth group Gambians Against Looted Assets, or GALA. The gathering was meant to protest the police-led removal of Auditor General Mudu Cisse, but it was forcefully broken up with tear gas. Among those detained was GALA spokesperson OSIWA, who was arrested while speaking to the media. To help us analyze the latest developments and to discuss what he sees as growing concerns over transparency and the government's disregard for the rule of law, we're joined by human rights advocate Mahdi Jobate.
5 people were arrested, 5 young men, and taken up to Koto police station. That's why I understand they are detained.
Do we know whether they've been charged?
Yes, the police, their statements were taken and charged for nuisance and unlawful assembly.
What is your reaction to this? It's becoming an everyday life now. Every now and then, young people will be arrested just for gathering. It's becoming a worrying trend in the Gambia.
Yes, because apparently the government doesn't want to abide by the rule of law. And it is very obvious that the action, by the president to remove the Auditor General is completely unconstitutional and illegal. And so the prevalence of corruption, inefficiency, and so on in the public sector is such that citizens, particularly young people, have taken up their constitutional right to protest these illegalities and constitutional actions and misconduct. So this is what is unfolding 9 years after the end of the dictatorship, which was characterized by human rights violations and massive corruption, only to realize that 9 years later, the incidence of corruption has become widespread. And where there is corruption, what follows is violations, because people will stand up against corruption to protest, to express themselves. And in that instance, the police are usually weaponized, clamp down on peaceful citizens assembling, subjecting them to arrest, detention, torture, and so on, including the use of tear gas. So this is what we are seeing unfolding in the Gambia, which is really concerning.
Tell us a little bit about the legality, whether the president has the power to forcefully remove an Auditor General of the Gambia.
In the first place, it is not a promotion. You get promoted in an institution in which you work to be moved from one level to another. So the position, the National Audit Office and the ministry are completely different. So the Auditor General is not promoted to be a minister or any other position. The law provides that the Auditor General serves a tenure of 9 years and can only be removed, by his own resignation or maybe death, or reaching a retirement age. But when the president wants to remove an Auditor General, the Constitution and the National Audit Office Act provides that it has to be on 2 conditions. On a matter of health, where the health of the Auditor General is such that he cannot perform his functions, or in the case of incompetence or misconduct, committed by the Auditor General. But in this case, the president has never said the Auditor General is sick or is incompetent. Rather, he just woke up one morning to say, I am removing you from the position of Auditor General to take you to be a minister. That is not grounds for the removal of an Auditor General. You cannot redeploy the Auditor General whatsoever. That is not provided in the law, in the Constitution and the National Audit Office Act. So the actions of the president are totally unconstitutional and illegal, and that must be challenged.
Why is the government so bent on removing Mr. Cisse as the Auditor General of the Gambia?
So that is the multi-million-dollar question. There are speculations that because the Auditor General, they wanted the Auditor General to sign up to certain changes in the government's accounts, which the Auditor General is not amenable to, and so on, that the Auditor General wanted to audit certain institutions. Or so, what can reasonably think would be that indeed the Auditor General is either being prevented from doing something or is being asked to do something which is not right, which he doesn't want to do. We saw the reports about the IEC, which was indeed damning. There are reports about the Edward Passmore Teaching Hospital and, other reports as well. I mean, practically all the reports from the National Audit Office about government institutions are damning.
Madi Jabate is a human rights advocate. In sports, the wait is over as the 2025-2026 UEFA Champions League kicks off this Tuesday, with African stars once again set to light up Europe's biggest stage. Players from across the continent, including Nigeria, Ghana, Morocco, Senegal, and Cote d'Ivoire, will be on the show, from seasoned veterans to rising talent. Nigeria leads with big names like Victor Osimhen, Ademola Lookman, and Rafael Onyedika, while Morocco boasts stars such as Ashraf Hakimi and Brahim Diaz. Ghana's Mohamed Kudus and Thomas Partey, Senegal's Nicolas Jackson and Pape Matar Sarr, and Cote d'Ivoire's Odilo Kusunu and Ahmed Traore are also among those flying the African flag. Meanwhile, Villarreal manager Marcelo says Thomas Partey is ready to face Tottenham in today's Champions League clash, just one day before the midfielder is due in a UK court on rape and sexual assault charges. The 32-year-old Ghanaian, formerly of Arsenal, faces 5 counts of rape and 1 of sexual assault relating to alleged incidents between 2021 and 2022. Partey denies all charges and, according to his lawyer, is eager to clear his name. In athletics, Nigeria's Tobi Amusan says she is overwhelmed with gratitude after winning silver in the women's 100 meters hurdles at the 2025 World Athletics Championships in Tokyo. Amusan clocked 12.28 seconds to finish just behind Switzerland's Taji Kambunji, who took gold with a national record of 12.24 seconds. Grace Stark of the U.S. claimed bronze in 12.34. The result was especially emotional for Musa, who narrowly missed the podium at the 2021 Olympics in the same city. Musa calls the medal a reward for perseverance after years of challenges. And we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Mustafa Sek and Ismaila Kamara for the technical support. Let's keep the conversation coming on all of our social media platforms: X, Instagram at WDR English, and Facebook West Africa Democracy Radio English Service. I am Imo Edet. Good evening.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, New Me FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County,
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Niba County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riverside County, Wakat FM Radio, Banga, Liberia, Radio Gulf FM 91.3 Sierra Leone in Nigeria, and Love 104.5 FM Abuja.
For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all about you, your views, and your opinions.